being Black. Once again, I'm grateful for all of you to take my call on such short notice to do this. Tonight we have Dr. Brittany Cooper, writer, author, professor, activist, all around really dope woman. Benet Vieira, writer, activist, founder, owner of Speakeasy Agency. Marlon Peterson, writer, activist, prison abolitionist. Kiese Lehman, writer, activist, professor. I like to call him the illest nigga alive. Phillip Roundtree, mental health worker, activist, talk show host, author pretty soon. And we'll have, others who will join us throughout the course of the conversation. But we're starting right here with you guys. And so my first question is, how are you feeling? One, in the moment of COVID-19, and two, dealing with the news of the past 3 weeks to a month that we've been fighting as a community, from Ahmaud Arbery to Breonna Taylor to George Floyd. How are you feeling? And anybody can jump. I'll start with you, Brittany.
I think I feel oddly detached and overwhelmed. Like, rage feels like my regular state. So, just a constant teeming, like, white supremacy don't love us, and it's trying to kill us. And that is sort of where I stay these days. I mean, we've lost 100,000 people in less than 3 months. And, and a hugely disproportionate amount of those folks have been Black, Native American, and Latinx. And so the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is the way that people moralized to Black folks at the beginning of the pandemic and said, well, y'all are dying more because you don't take care of yourselves, you don't exercise, you don't go for walks. And then you get Brother Ahmaud Arbery, being killed while on the job, just minding his business, getting some exercise in. And then you wonder why Black folks are always thinking about the negotiation of public space. And then you get to this moment, and I have these conflicting emotions, because on the one hand, I could barely stand to witness the video of Brother George Floyd having, essentially being smothered. And I felt this enduring rage, like, oh, this is how the fuck white people pray. Like, the thing that the God of white supremacy does is when it kneels to pray, that kneeling never happens without being on somebody's neck. Like, that's the really hard truth for like any white people of conscience, is that their kneeling is always, whether we're talking about Native Americans or we're talking about Black people, the default position is that they are kneeling on somebody's neck, and that their theology and their political theology, all of it is designed to crush the life and spirit of other people. It is rooted in the idea that other people's lives and spirits and ways of being in the world don't matter. So I'm watching that. I'm thinking about that. And then but I'm up this morning, I'm texting my homegirls, and I'm saying, well, what about Breonna Taylor, right? Like, what about that sister? Because she's an essential worker in a moment where all of a sudden everybody's becoming conscious again about the ways that frontline workers matter. She's an EMT. She's a first responder, and she's sleeping in her house, and, the cops bust in and kill her, right? And we don't have any political analysis around that. People have Facebook laments, but ain't been no marching in the streets. Ain't been no marching on the officers who did that. Hasn't been any, there's been outrage, but not at the level that we saw for Brother Floyd yesterday all over the country. And I'm tired of being in a position where when brothers get killed, we always mourn for them. And then sisters look grimy and divisive when we say, but what about the sisters, right? I'm tired of being in the position where we have to keep pointing out that a sister died too as a mode of Black politics, because it should be a given that we care about the brothers. We care about them. We're devastated by it. But why is Black women, the rage about Black women dying, always an addendum to the conversation? And then finally, I saw earlier today that the young sister Darnella Frazier, teenage girl, was one of the folks who taped this killing of George Floyd. And she's getting trolled on social media, and she's devastated and she's afraid. And I just thought, but for these Black teen girls being witnesses, it made me think about Rachel Jontel, who witnessed, who heard Trayvon Martin being murdered, and then seeing this young woman and thinking that part of our politics has to be about these Black girl bystanders, the ones who die because they're bystanders in state actions that are typically targeted toward men, and the ones who live and who are then left the burden of bearing witness to these horrific acts and making sure that folks don't forget. And so how do we hold those truths, and how do we take care of those sisters, right? So those are all the things I'm thinking right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Anybody else want to, comment on what she said or tell me how you're feeling?
I share Brittany's thoughts about our sisters, and even having to check myself on how fast and quickly I responded to George, but I hadn't given any words to Breonna. And it takes me back to the moment when I stopped protesting, actually, was when Rakia Boyd was killed, and there was a protest held in New York, and no one showed up for her. And I had showed up so many times for brothers who had been killed and faced police with assault rifles in my face for brothers. And to see Rakia Boyd, for the protest to be like you could see windmills going through, it was almost no one there. That moment changed me and how we respond. So I'm thinking about Breonna. It makes me think of Corinne Gaines. I think about her often, probably every month, because I remember people, particularly Black men, said she deserved to die because she was armed. But yet we revere this image of Malcolm with the shotgun at the window. And because Corinne was allegedly armed protecting her child, people said she deserved to die. So I don't know what to do with all of those, those complex and nuanced feelings of being exhausted. White supremacy doesn't take a day off. I'm tired, I'm hurt, I'm traumatized, but yet, like, when do we show up for Black women? Why do Black women have to be on a back burner? So for me, the thing that kept coming up yesterday was Toni Morrison. The very function of racism is distraction. And I refused to be distracted, and I went about doing my work. So.
Thank you. Phillip?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever given myself an opportunity to sit still and be still, right? Because I don't want to get caught up in my thoughts. So it's always best if I keep moving. Because we're resilient, right? And it's like a gift and a curse, because we are going to keep moving. We are going to keep pushing forward, no matter what the atrocities that take place in our society. I think for me, it's just like I'm just here. You know what I mean? Like legit, I'm just here. And when I say I'm just here is, again, I haven't given myself an opportunity to feel anything, which is, scary, because it's going to come out. It's going to manifest itself one way or another. I will say that I've noticed physiologically, like, I don't know the last time, like, I've been able to truly inhale and exhale at a great pace where I'm not holding my breath. I think one thing that goes overlooked amongst Black folk is which impacts our wellness in general, is just the idea that we hold our breath a lot, right? We hold our breath a lot, which negatively impacts us. And I find myself at times just sitting there for 3 or 4 seconds out of time, just not breathing. And I know that's directly related to the stress. I know that's directly related to the depression, the anxiety. that I feel with regards to this, these situations that's taking place. I have my nightly show that I host, and I think that's been an outlet for me, where I can truly let out my anger and my rage and frustration during that 45-minute time period where it's socially acceptable, where it's received in an appropriate, where it's received by the people in a way that is understood. And yesterday I had a show, and a white homie of mine, Mike's, because I've been, this past week in particular, I'm like, yo, right, this isn't necessarily about black men, right? This is a war on blackness. And it was difficult to try to really explain that point to different people because they just weren't getting it, right? It's just like this hierarchy and oppression, it's the oppression Olympics, right? Where black men, they get the gold medal in oppression. Then you might have black women get the silver, and they're battling with trans women and what have you. But this is the ideas and the thinking of a community. And it was a white brother who came on, and he was a good friend of mine, Mike. And he said, yo, he said, white people don't, all white people see is blackness, right? It's us who makes this hierarchy. Right. And so when I see these situations, I'm able to look at the macro and see that it's truly a war on blackness. And as far as for me, I just really try to keep on ticking, man, because I know this isn't the last. And so me knowing that it's not the last, I have to detach myself from getting caught up with Christian Cooper. I have to be mindful about getting caught up in the protest of Ahmaud and of Floyd, because I know it's going to keep coming. And energetically, if I continue to give to every situation the way that I desire, I won't be here, right? And I think many of us feel that way. And so again, for me, it's just a matter of just limiting. I've been doing a lot of just being by myself, but still not being present and mindful and being in the moment. Again, because I'm attempting to avoid. So I try to avoid social media at all costs. But as Al Latif could tell you, I like getting into these little Facebook sparring sessions. Again, just for my wellness, I realized that whether I acknowledge it or not, everything that I'm experiencing, everything that we're experiencing is being caught up in my gut. And at some point, it's going to manifest itself. And so, again, just trying to keep that awareness.
I have a question about, when you said this thing about how all white people see is blackness, like I may have missed part of the point. So that they don't see the other distinctions that black people make. So like, were you making a point about, for instance, these like gender distinctions, or did I miss?
No. It's the idea that, clearly they and again, I'm not a white man, so I can't tell you what they white people, what they see for real, right? And so coming from him, what I think it's like, it's a war on blackness, regardless, whether we're talking about, Floyd, whether we're talking about Cooper. I live here in Philadelphia. We got asbestos in the schools within the inner city, right? Black boys, black girls, but we talk about the disparities in wealth. All of it, it's just everywhere, right? Everywhere it's a war on blackness. And so I think for us being a hetero cis male, and those with whom I've come in contact with, we've got caught up in it saying, no, white men and white people are only they're trying to come at the head of the household. They're trying to come at the head, right? And it's just like, no, everybody's getting fucked over, right? Everybody's getting the raw end of the deal. We only pay attention to it when it's a Floyd, right? So again, we get the gold medal and everybody else is fighting for what's next amongst our own. And so if we could take a step back from the micro and we can look at it, is that black people are being are facing these atrocities that are taking place, then maybe we truly would have that quote unquote unity that we desire, if that makes sense.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And welcome, Derica. You joined us a little late. We're just saying how we're feeling in these moments. PSA is up next.
Oh, it's Derica. I gotta say my name, Derica, before my
Derek, I'm sorry.
Here and snatch you up, and then it's be a whole nother conversation.
My apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be pretty short. First of all, thank y'all for coming on here, and thank y'all for organizing this, Teeth. So I think I've been thinking a lot about the difference between like expendable labor and essential labor, and I've been thinking about guns in relationship to that. I was raised by my mama and my aunties, and all of them, my grandmother doesn't work anymore, but all of them are still essential workers, meaning that they've had to deal with a lot, including a lot of humiliation over the past 3 months and the past 6 decades, because they're all over 60. And there's somewhere in this conversation in Mississippi, we're gonna have to talk about the incarcerated unpaid workers, who are literally like dying at rates that nobody can even quantify. And the majority of those workers are Black men, and some of those unpaid incarcerated labor is Black women. But the Black women in my family, they're essential workers, they're underpaid workers, and they're also all people who believe in that gun, right? Like they believe in all of them, sleeping with the gun, bringing a gun to work. And so like, I'm trying to think a bit more about what Brittany was saying, and what I'm thinking about, and this is open-ended because I haven't been able to come around to what, I haven't been able to make like this theory actually connect, but I think about the humiliation that my essential family members who happen to be Black women experience, and the labor force. And I think about the importance of the gun for them and protecting themselves often from Black men at home. And I think about, my growing up in these households, being really close to guns, having an intimate relationship with guns early in my life, and then deciding probably for the last 3 decades that guns just did not need to be a part of my life. But my family has been talking so much more this summer about the importance of guns, in protection, and also just in like humiliation. Like, so I don't know how deep we want to get in this conversation, but I just been thinking about shooting people, and I don't have a gun. I've been thinking about my family shooting people as a means to protect themselves. And in that desire, like my family never talks about somebody going to jail. They talk about somebody needing to get shot. And for my young life, I could feel that. And I've been trying to push that off for a little bit, but I don't know. There's something about this moment that just makes me wonder about the utility of guns. And what we supposed to do with guns as Black women, as Black men, as Black genderqueer folk. Like, what are we supposed to do with these guns? Like, what are we supposed to do? I know one thing we're not supposed to do is terrorize people who would never terrorize us. But like, what are you supposed to do with that desire you have to really like make people suffer? And like right now in this particular moment, I want them to suffer much more than I want us to be free. And that's a problem on my end. But like, what are we supposed to do with that? Like, what do you do? What do you do when you really want them motherfuckers to like, not just die, but like get, like suffer extreme humiliation? And my family says the motherfuckers need to get shot. But I'm not sure. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm coming to y'all with like not fully formed thoughts. I'm just not sure what we're supposed to do. Those of us who have guns, those of us who don't have guns, like what the fuck is the utility of the gun? And how does gender like determine the utility of the gun and race, particularly in like, the Deep South? So that's just some stuff I'm thinking about.
Thank you. I see Marlon ready to jump right on in. You got it, brother.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for putting this together, Teeth, and nice to see some faces I ain't seen in a minute. and see some new faces. So you asked me the question is how we feel, how I feel. And I feel like I'm bringing, every time these things happen, I feel like I'm bringing I have to reconcile my entire person into how I react. And what I mean by that is, I have a father with Alzheimer's disease, and we're still figuring out dementia. And we're still right now figuring that out, right? And I have a mother who is struggling with that relationship and the transition in that. And older sister, who's also figuring herself out in the transition of my father, who was a person sort of kept us all together, right? And I was thinking about, I'm going to play to buying a house, right? And like, is that an important thing right now? And depending on where I do it, thinking about I want to be in a area that's a little less urban. And I'm like, well, is that the safe thing for me to do right now? And then I think about, I feel for my niece. So I feel like I have a niece I'm super close to. She's 5. And she is a super energetic girl. Like her energy is on 1,000. And that's how I like her, because she's just like, I'm gonna be me, and I'm at 5. And I feel sometimes, I'm just saying like honestly how I feel and the range of emotions. And part of it's also feeling like, have I been useless to her? Because, and I'm saying I'm bringing that's my whole person. That's all the things that's going through my head right now. And when these moments happen, those are all the things I'm thinking about in relation to the reaction, in terms of what to do, what I say, what I engage in, and I have to struggle with all of that, right? But like, what's important? Is this issue more important than the last time it happened, or when it happens next week, or when it happens today, but we don't get the video until another 2 months from now? And I also feel, I think a collective energy of how we all feel is you talk about utility, like utility in talking, right? And you know what I mean? Utility in like words now, right? I'm on a group thread with a bunch of folks who from another group I'm in, and these some white folks up on there, and all that sort of jazz, and who claim to be do-gooders and all that type of stuff. And I just posed a question in this group last night. I just posed and left it. And I said, how do you expect me to feel? And how do you expect people like me to feel in this moment? And I can give a fuck about what they really think. It's much more like, you got to sit with the shit that what you would want to do right now. If you're honest, you know what you want to do. You know how you want to react, right? And I think the reaction, it's like, it's not because it happened before only, or because it happened, we hear most recently with Breonna and Ahmaud and Mr. Floyd, but we know it's going to happen again. And it's sort of like, it's like, how real am I about it? I'm just, we know it's going to happen. It's like somebody come to your house, like people come to your house every day, and they're going to come. And you're like, well, you're going to figure out how to talk about this. They coming. It's going to happen. I think that it's almost, I think that part of the film is almost a literally, it's not only a lack of care for Black life, it's a disrespect of the the complexity of Black life. I think, it's because where we react, we get upset, we'll do all the things. Some of us are organized already, doing what we do. We're going to be writing, we're going to be doing all lending support, and that's what we do, and that's good. But also that, I always think about kids right now, like teenagers. I remember as a kid, I still hold the trauma of being a kid and hearing about Eleanor Bumpurs here in New York City, right? Or when I was in junior high school and hearing about Rodney King. I remember that, and that was in LA. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Rodney King was in LA, I remember, but I still remember that, no police wasn't messing with me then. But it's I knew something it was telling me something. I know it was a message that was being transmitted to me. And in these moments, particularly now, at least in those days, you know, if you didn't watch the news, which was easy to do, if you didn't get the newspaper, you could somewhat be disconnected from everything. And you could somewhat, you can't unknow what happened, but you could forget a little bit of it at times if it's not in your face. There's a plethora of information around us. We have access to trauma all the time. You know what I mean? You can't scroll, you don't have like an editing, no trauma on my feed. So I'm gonna just like put that filter in. You can't do that. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that like what messages are being, on TikTok, you know, the place where you're supposed to be dancing and playing and kids seeing the messages on TikTok, you know, these are all the things that I feel when, like today, that's today. That's how I feel.
Thank you. Derek.
Well, you're going to have to deal with my mama, not me, you know. Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I was watching, you know, and I heard, I think Brittany, and I didn't get the other sister's name, bring up Breonna Taylor and Corinne Gaines. I'm just really, really grateful. You know, I'm really grateful to hear their names, like especially today. In terms of how I'm feeling, I have so many range of emotions right now. You know, it's so interesting what animates grief. It's like how the police killings are like animating my grief for my grandmother, and they don't seem divorced, even though they feel like two different worlds. It's like this. Is there a sound? Do y'all hear a sound?
Yeah, I don't know.
That me?
I don't know where it's coming from.
That's so weird.
Oh no.
Okay, so yeah, just that. Yeah, so my grief has been like in cycles, like watching all the people die in the world and kind of feel helpless about it, and just thinking about the ways that people are losing people that they loved, and how Marlon just said, you know, it's all on display, it's all accessible, you know, whether you want to opt into it or not. Yeah, like those days are just, they feel so far away when you learn about a lynching via a Black newspaper. Like this is not that anymore. It's not that. On the other hand, I think that I feel just really, really grateful that people are still resisting. There is something about, like, you know, in 2014, after Darren Wilson murdered Michael Brown, I just remember so many friends and family condemning people for burning stuff, for looting, for stealing rims. Like, it was overwhelming. And it was just being in those threads, being on those phone calls, being in the streets, like trying to defend people, to today where almost every single post I saw online was like defending people. So something politically shifted from 2014 to 2020, where now I'm not the one trying to convince, you know, my friends and family, no, like, you know, riots is the language of the unheard. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm watching people now like push people or saying, you know, y'all can burn that Target, y'all can burn that Walmart, y'all can burn them gas stations, y'all can get some rent. It's just like, wow, like in 6 years, like that's the shift, like, you know, that we're experiencing. I think that is important. I think that the conversation on abolition to me is particularly important because I know I definitely was not an abolitionist 2014. I was definitely sent those killer cops to jail. Like that was like the ultimate goal. And since then, our notions of justice has been transformed. And that doesn't
I can learn to
like the right thing to always say in the moment. But I think that if we took a second to think about the people who are organizing and doing activism work in between these police killings, they probably can speak even better to some of the change and politicization they've seen. You know, so that students are organizing on campus. I saw University of Minnesota, they have limited their connection with the Minnesota Police Department. I don't know if y'all remember, but when I was in law school, a student had to go through a hunger strike, like a hunger strike, like to make justice. So that, you know, the day after that video comes out, 4 police officers are killed. I mean, or not killed, Jesus. 4 police officers are fired. And then the next day we see, you know, students win a demand to limit that relationship. So sometimes it's hard to keep track of this because we know none of this is going to bring George's life back. It's not going to bring Breonna back. It's not going to bring all these people back who we lost and all the people whose names like we never know. I think about all the time how there's so many people who are hurt and injured by the police that we don't know their names because they live. Isn't that something? because their names don't become a hashtag. We don't even know, like people who are on life support, we don't even know their names unless they die. So there's so much more work to be done. And I'm just so happy that people continue to struggle.
Thank you.
Also, my baby graduated today. So I'm my skin is clear. I got my hair wrap on. I'm just like grateful for this invitation. So I'm telling you, I'm truly feeling like a full, complex human being.
So you brought up. Thank you. Go ahead, Brittany. What are you saying?
Saying congrats.
No.
Thank you. Because I was like, when his nickname is Juice, I was like, Juice, how you feel about graduating from kindergarten? He said, it's my last Zoom class. I said, okay. Okay.
So you actually brought up a point that I wanted to try to go a little deeper into. And it was, what does justice look like in these situations? Like, what is justice for us right now? Like, is it just being fired? Is it an indictment and then an acquittal? Like, what's justice? Anybody just jump on there.
I think that's what I'm trying to say is like, for my family, I've never heard my family, debate whether or not somebody was going to get acquitted or should get acquitted. And, is this the right thing, right? Again, we were born in rural Mississippi and then grew up in Jackson. And so I'm just interested to me in the ways that like some masses of groups of these people generationally have been like, fuck traditional routes of justice. And they would not consider themselves abolitionists, but for all intents and purposes, they kind of are. Right now, the alternative rhetorically is like that person needs to suffer at our hands, right? Like, and I don't think we put enough imagination into like this, if it is only an imaginative exercise. But I just really think it's interesting how like folk in central Mississippi that I know don't put a shred of hope into any sort of judicial outcome that would quote unquote like, see justice. Like, I think they think justice has to come at the hands of the people who are harmed. And down here, because so many of our people have been murdered, like it always comes at the end of a gun. You know what I'm saying? When my grandmama got raped, my grandfather went to fucking Parchment for killing the sheriff. My grandmama got pulled up went to the police station for shooting a man who was trying to come in her house. The first time I had to go to juvie was because I tried to hurt a man who was killing who was attempting, I think, to kill my mama. So I don't know. I just think it's really interesting, like the way abolitionism and this sort of desire to like have no faith and trust in the system. Like I'm interested in where those two meet and what it has to do with like the desire for violence.
And see, I'm glad we're digging in around this because I know that I'm supposed to be like abolition now. And in theory, I'm there. I'm like, I don't have a lot of faith in the criminal justice system. But here's the thing that's actually the challenge. But one, like you can say, I just want like the masses of white people to suffer. Like I want them to understand what it feels like to have somebody just a black body put a knee on their neck and just not let up. You know what I mean? I want them to just rot in jails, right? I want a reckoning for them. I want a reckoning for them because I don't think that a world in which because I don't buy, because like arguments about the soul of white people and shit or, the way in which they're made morally bankrupt and whatever because they don't, it feels like bad Christian theology, like consolation theology, like, well, but their souls are made corrupt, but they enact in those corrupt souls in ways that affect Black life, right? And so that I struggle with that. But I've been getting a lot of harassment because about a month ago, I tweeted, fuck Trump, fuck each and every Trump supporter. And I have got, hundreds of emails, death threats. Somebody called my mama's cell phone in the state where she lives, just all kind of foolishness. And so I've had to like enact all these security protocols. Last summer I got swatted, somebody just sent 5 cops to my house while I was chilling with my dude, and so I had to call the police this time around to say, I need to alert you that I might get swatted and I need you to have a protocol. And so thankfully I have a friend who's a brother who is in law enforcement, but has good politics as much as possible to do some of the going between for me. And I dealt with just foolishness from the cops about, like being disbelieved. And then I talked to a different brother who was a law enforcement officer. He says, "Sister, I would encourage you to get a shotgun." And I thought, I'm afraid of guns, both because I have struggled with depression, but also because both my parents, today I should note, is my father's birthday, my biological father's birthday. And he was killed when I was 9 years old by a shotgun. And my mother is also a victim of gun violence. And so to have a life so fundamentally shaped by gun violence, and then to have it suggested to me that the only way to protect myself is with a gun, is hard. But the other part of that is, part of the reason that I struggle with abolition is because I'm so angry about the bullshit that Black men do to Black women. And I want some shit to happen to brothers when they do Black women wrong, right? Because my dad was shot by a Black man and my mama was shot by a Black man, right? And when I think about so much of the violence and devastation that I've seen up close in my life, it's been at the hands of Black men. And it's not that I think that prisons help them, but it's that what does justice look like for Black women when we abolish prisons? And so I've heard how it's a way of imagining the world and all of that. But I'm like, pragmatically, what the fuck does that shit mean? Right? For protecting sisters, because that is the thing that drives me every day. Because as a Black girl growing up in America, for me, the points of violence were not just the shit that white people were going to do and the threats that they brought, but the lethal forms of violence that I saw up close and personal were the things that brothers were going to do and the way they were going to come and be violent and disruptive. And how do you both hold the truth of that and then still be in the streets like, y'all matter? We will risk our lives. We will get arrested. We will imagine a new system, because we're ultimately imagining that new system. I mean, it's like the impulse you said, Brother Phillip, earlier. You said, I just had to let Christian Cooper and all that happen to him go. Because the thing I thought was, his impulse was to defend the white chick. He was like, she shouldn't lose her job. The only reason that white woman got any sense of what justice might look like is because she lost something in the process of the threat. But if she hadn't lost anything, she wouldn't have any sense that was literally the thing that made her recognize that something was wrong. And he didn't think, at the point that there were consequences for the terror she tried to enact, his white empathy kicks in for him. And I'm like, brothers, y'all ain't right. Like, y'all, like, sister, like, take all the shit, ruin her life. She don't deserve nothing. Put her under the jail. And this brother is like, well, we've gone too far. Civility and shit. And so I guess I'm saying there are individual Black men in my life who I trust, and I have homeboys. But politically, in the aggregate, I don't trust Black men. I see what the state does. I feel a racial political commitment to fight for them because they are my people. But when it comes to what is the to quote Hortense Spillers, what does intramural Black life look like? I don't trust brothers. And so I don't trust no concept around justice that does not deal with a deep reckoning around the violence that Black men do, both to us and to each other. And that for me is always, and it's hard because I feel like a traitor in these moments when I'm like, we fight for you, we love you, and we do it. And we know ain't no reciprocity, ain't no brothers organizing no protests for Breonna Taylor. We know, I mean, Derrica reminded us of, and Benet of what they said about Corin Gaines. Remember that brothers talk shit about Sandra Bland. Why didn't she just be quiet and cooperate and she would have lived? They don't ride for us. And so can we be honest about the fact that our guiding impulse around building justice begins from the proposition that we don't want to see knees on George Floyd's neck. But that same concept of justice inherently too often holds with it the disappearing of the shit that happens to Breonna Taylor. She's always the addendum to the conversation. And that makes it super hard for me to get on board with what this pragmatically looks like or how to have an imagination beyond that, because that's literally the stuff that's up close in what we see.
Word.
Yeah, I gotta sum it up really quickly because that's what we have to hold, intention. I think that what's so powerful about the politics and the practices of abolition is that at least the kind of abolition I follow. I know what kind of abolition other people follow, but it's led by Black women who are rape survivors, murder survivors, like people who have escaped like so much trauma. And I mean, Brittany, you're absolutely right. You know, we're vulnerable, Black women in particular, to our neighbors, to our lovers, to our parents, our siblings, police. We stand at the intersection of being proximate, especially proximate to that violence, you know, because this society is patriarchal, it's racist, it's classist, it's sexist, it's homophobic, all those things true. So when people talk about like the politics of abolition as just an aspirational hope, you know, I know that I came to abolition because I knew that those systems of punishment will only beget more violent men, more violent people. You know, I was kicked out of my house. I was 16 years old. The police showed up. Because it was a domestic violence dispute between me and my mom's boyfriend at the time. He said, because this is, you know, domestic violence, someone has to leave. And I was the one who had to get kicked out. And that was the police, right? And so it's like, damn, the police, I'm not safe with the police. They're making a teenager leave a child. I didn't start the fight. I mean, it was a whole situation. You know, so when I read the work of Angela Davis, or I look at Miriam Cabo or Beth Ritchie with Insight, it's because of those traumatic experiences. Because what we're gonna do is just create a system of punishment that's just gonna put more and more people at risk. So I'm thinking, okay, at the end of the day, what's gonna help, you know, eliminate that potential risk, or at least reduce that risk for Black women, for Black queer people, for all kinds of people? And it's like, well, we can put people in cages, and we know how that impacts them psychologically. We know that it's potentially that we're exposing to more violence, which then begets more trauma. And then once they're released, who absorbs them usually? Black mothers, Black sisters, Black lovers who are their women. So now we've put them, you know, we've unfortunately reduced them to living in cages, and we put them back in the home with the people who they were probably violent with in the first place. And it's like, well, if that's not an ultimate option, like what are some other ways that we can undo that patriarchy, undo that violence, right? And there could be so many ways to think about that. So I don't typically think about it as like a pre-abolition world or a post-abolition world, or boom, today, all the prisons close, all the police turn in their guns, everyone goes home, right? I don't think about it like that. I think about my friend Phillip, who does anti-patriarchal classes and anti-toxic masculinity classes with groups of boys every single summer in LA, because that's what abolition is gonna take. They have to learn not to be violent. So when they grow up, they understand how to have healthy relationships with people who are just not other Black men or brown men. That's the work of abolition, right? It's like, it's not just like an aspiration, like it lives in our politics, it lives in how we take care of each other. And yeah, ultimately it would be great if one day all those things can just close. You know, I was telling this to someone I work with. I said, you know what? To be Black and on the left is to realize that all the things that you thought you wanted when you were Black are actually like not the best thing. It's like, you know, I've always wanted private property. I wanted to own my own house. And then you get politicized. You're like, damn, private property is messed up. Or marriage has been denied to your family. And you're like, damn, it's bound to patriarchy. Or you want some kind of degree from a school and it's like, damn, they racist too. It's like, we finally just getting here. We finally just now being able to get justice. And now y'all telling us that we can't even have justice because people can't go to prison. It's like, it's a constant challenge of what's underneath you've been sold. And since Black people have been abolitionists, even white abolitionists, once they finish fighting for, you know, Black people to be released from slavery, they said, okay, y'all free from slavery. Now y'all should have all the access to things that white people have. But just because white people get people to go to prisons, we have to say, that's not good enough. I don't want what white people have. That's not freedom to me, you know? And so it's like, it's that constant struggle of like wanting something and then being like, damn, that's not even good enough. And that's what we've been sold on.
And white abolitionists didn't even believe that. They just believed that slavery was bad, but they didn't believe that Black people were equal. Not a lot of them, right? Which is also part of the challenge, you know? But I hear you, sis. I'm trying. I just need, you know, I can't go quickly, but I can go. Okay.
Long as we on the train.
All right.
Yeah. I mean,
thank you, Ukada, for joining us.
I was just gonna say, and I'm gonna make it short. I was just trying to think about this idea of justice in situations like these, and it kept, the idea of
I can't.
um, the idea of, it for me, there's no such thing. You know what I mean? It can't be any justice. I, I look at it as, I'm a sports guy. It's like, somebody hits a home run and they peacock around the bases and they showing off, they excited. Then you look at the score, it's 20-1. You know what I mean? And so it's just like there's been too much, right? When I think about the historical trauma that Black folk have experienced, I think about my own personal traumatic experiences that I had experience that I've had with police when I was 16 and my car matched the description, even though I was driving a purple Ford Escort and the car they was looking for was a white something. You know what I mean? Up until me being in college and, me paying for my juice and taste testing it was stealing. You know what I mean? And me having to do jail time and me having to plea out because of some racist cops, some racist school police who knew the names of all the Black folk on campus, right? And so in my eyes, nothing's going to atone for that, right? So I look at this might be a 50-point game, right? If he go to jail, but outside of that, it's just like, okay, because there's been so much done, right? And so it's just like the idea of, because so much has been done, so much has happened, whether it's through me reading or my own, personal experience, it's just like, nah, it can't be no justice because you can't go backwards. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, like we were saying, it's something happening to some young brother, some young sister, some young person right now, right? They being pulled over just because they look a certain way. You know what I mean? And so, nah, it's no such thing as justice. I didn't even have any. I think y'all might have turned the rage button on in me, right? Because now I feel like this fire and this anger inside my belly right now, and it's extremely uncomfortable. And I've done a lot of work to try and avoid those feelings because I know what that looks like for me. You know what I mean? I know what that looks like for me, and I know what that can look like for those around me, right? Because it can cause my partner who's sitting over on the couch, it can cause her to worry, right? Because it can take me to a place of potentially no return, right? It's no coincidence I got Biggie with a gun to his head back there, right? Because it's so symbolic of what I feel that just happens to Black folks so often, right? It's just like the creativity, the beautiful aspects of us are never seen, right? And we don't even see them for ourselves, right? Because we can't see what women are talking about with regards to women, right? And it took me a while to even start to unlearn and how difficult and how uncomfortable that process is. That's why even in the midst of knowing that a lot of the comments that I've been seeing from brothers, is completely unhealthy and quote unquote toxic, even though I hate that word, right? It's still a part of me that shows grace because I know what that looks like. I know that, in order to survive, a lot of us had to adopt this unhealthy skill set, this unhealthy mindset in order to make it to the next day. So it's no such thing with justice. I might say, oh, wow, they got one, right? But like I said, I could look in here in Philly and I could see AP kids, Black kids in AP classes. They got to stand outside McDonald's to use the Wi-Fi because Comcast not opening up their internet for folk. You know what I mean? And so, for me, that's all interrelated, right? It's all interrelated. So, yeah.
I know Marlon been trying to jump in. I'm sorry. Hold on, you're muted. There you go. Maybe not.
All right, I'm on now. I feel like the old person, like, where the mute button at? The question, I mean, you said, what does justice look like in this moment? And the only way I approach that, because that's like part of the world I navigate, like, what does justice look like in these sort of situations? And ascribe to abolitionist politics. And also, I just want to say, like, on that side, and know that abolitionism to me, just like any sort of ideology, is just as an ideology, right? That I attach myself to. I just wanted to show that. But what does justice look like in this moment? I don't know a time in American history when white folks have not been killing Black people. So I think the answer to what does justice look like is some shit we don't know. I don't know what that is. I'm saying abolition is an option, right? It's an option, just like so many other things. Picking up a gun is an option. Them going to jail is an option. Them being fired and wherever, that is an option. But I know that, this is what I know about those options. At least I'm just talking about just thinking about the historical record, is that all of those options have still gotten us here. All of those options have gotten us here. So I mean, the golden gun would be we do this thing and that is what fixes it, right? But I know this thing about, like I spent time in jail with cops who were arrested, who were convicted. And, unbeknownst to most people, cops are treated differently in jail too, right? They also get, privileged treatment inside in prisons too. Like they go to, they get escorted different places and they get the best jobs in the facility and, all that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying people go to prison to be punished, but I think the expectation is that part of the expectation of prison period is to fulfill one aspect of how we feel. And that aspect is vengeance, right? That's one aspect that it does fulfill, and it does it effectively. I think in many cases, you put somebody away. I think part of it is like the old karate pictures. You kill my brother, I go kill your father, whatever is in old karate pictures. Like that was a whole story about vengeance, the old karate flicks. And I think prison is just in my modern era, that's what it does. It's a way to get rid of people and do this sort of thing with it. But it never really does that, right? Because you got somebody else coming behind them that's probably going to do the same thing, right? And as Derek mentioned, like, people come home and, prisons aren't designed to make people better. We all know that whole slat. But so, people come home and not all, but oftentimes do recommit that rage towards the people who they say they love the most, which is their partner oftentimes. So what I guess I'm getting towards is that, I mean, in the spectrum of radical notions of what we can do, in this particular moment, we can't take this moment out of the legacy of what has been happening in American moments. Like you can't divorce this one from any other one. And that when you look at it as a compilation, that like that compilation, we have tried all different ways, and particularly now we're coming up with more ways now. Now, as you mentioned, like people are saying, yeah, it's okay to go out there and express yourself, set shit on fire. Okay, will that prevent it from happening next time? Right? I don't know. I'm just saying that like I'm down with that. I'm just saying that like I understand that shit. I understand that the desire just to be flippant and haphazard, right? I get that. But I also get that whether it be them going to jail, the death penalty, as some people might say, whether it be death penalty on the street, TSA, the death penalty on the street or the death penalty in jail. Those notions have not gotten us to the place where we don't have to be on the Zoom talking about this. Right? And so I don't know what it is, but I know we have to collectively realize and evaluate the things that we have been, right? And like, have these things been working to what we want? Because, as I said, prison, jails, the justice system, injustice system, it fulfills certain parts of all of us. There's not, of course, even as a person who considers himself, who ascribes to abolitionist politics, there is a part of me that says, yeah, I want to go to jail. I can't act like that ain't true. You know what I'm saying? That's a part of what I know. That's a part of what my conditioning is, that's an option. And I also know street justice is an option. I'm also familiar with that too, right? And I'm just saying that, like, I just know those things don't work. Have not worked yet. Let me say it, those things have not worked yet. Let's just put it like that. They have not worked yet. And I think for, in this term, we look at these particular incidents now in the whole moment of this, the global health crisis and lives completely disrupted and interrupted. And, we didn't think about how, these folks who are now dealing with this trauma connected to this violence, like they have parents and family members who have been impacted by the virus, people who have died, they lost their jobs, they didn't get their stimulus check in. All that's going into that rage right now. all that's going into the rage at this moment. And I end off with this, that if the planet is collectively telling us to sit down and do shit differently, that's what the planet just said. Sit down, do some shit differently. Whether it be in your personal life, your eating habits, your whatever you do, your partner, whatever the fuck it is that you do, the planet's saying sit down and check yourself. And I think all the forms of what we've seen as justice, we need to sit down and check and see if these shit's been working. And be thinking not even out the box, but creating new territory. You know what I mean? Because it's just us that's dying every time with the same options.
For the thing that just kept popping in my head is just, it's just been irreparable harm, man. Like the harm is done, and so it's no comeback from that in my eye. That's me personally, right? Like once the harm is done, the apologies, whatever comes after that, don't mean much to me. You know what I mean? Again, I still try, part of me still tries to show the grace and what have you. But the harm is done. It's done. I just, it keeps coming to me like that. Like the harm is done. And so what we'll try to do is, we'll continue to find things to help us mask that pain, mask that trauma, right? So whether we want the legal system, we want them to help aid us, but again, the harm is done. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be the same. A part of me was taken, right? When Floyd died, but that's just me, right? And so now I got to know, and I just try to take that harm and trying to harness it for whatever good. You know what I mean? It's just like the idea, like Hove did that. So hopefully you don't have to go through that, right? So hopefully somebody that's one, that's two right now, right? Like I can be able to assist them in this idea of harm reduction.
Phil, can I ask you a question?
What's
Do you
up?
feel like the harm is done when because gratefully, I think this conversation is asking us to center a lot of, like, there's concentric circles in this conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, do you feel like the harm is done when you think about the harm that we do interpersonally to Black women? Like, would you also say the harm is done?
Yeah. Again, man, I think, when I let me think a little bit. Nah, it's real though. I think,
I think be careful what you answer.
Yeah, I'm looking in the right corner like Brittany. Come on, don't do that, Doc. Don't do it to me. No, you know what? I do, and I think that's why the harm has been done, right? The harm has been done. So again, now I'm trying to atone, right? I'm trying to apologize. I'm trying to hold, spaces like the hashtag You Good Man Men's group, so I can bring them in and say, yo, y'all done harm some folk, right? Y'all done harm some folk out there, and it's no way to truly atone for that. Right. But again, it's that idea of harm reduction. What can we do now to try and educate you? So now when you go back out there, you can minimize the harm that not only you've caused, but, however you identify gender wise, how you can, again, minimize that. And so, yeah, man, and I think that's the difficult part, because that's why I look at hip hop with such a critical eye. You know what I mean? At one point I didn't, but then I had to sit and think about just all the harm that's been caused to Black boys, to Black girls, to Black persons, to Black bodies. And I'm just like, yo, everybody just harming everybody. You know what I mean? And so it's important for me to be able to take that step back. And I know that I'm going to harm again. Right? I'm going to harm again, because I know that this idea of perfection that I continue to seek is just not real. I thought I was the best dad in the world. This might be a little transparent moment. I'm doing everything in the world. But I had a moment last summer. I harmed my 10-year-old daughter, right? By one innocuous statement. But I know that caused irreparable harm to her. And when she's 35, she might look back and say, Dad, that was fucked up, man. Because I know I do that with my mother, right? I know I do that with my father. So yeah, I it's just, we out here harming folk, right? But I think it's ideally we can, become aware of that and then hopefully do some type of harm reduction to try and minimize it.
I know the women are looking like they ready to just go ahead, Brittany.
No, because it just sounds like bullshit. Because it sounds like you're saying, because you sound okay. I'm sorry, I'm being an asshole.
No. You
okay. But look, it's like you were real earnest and genuine, and you meant that shit, and like you meant it. But I'm thinking about, what does that mean? I mean, one, I know we're having a very heteronormative conversation, and I just want to acknowledge that we ain't doing a great job yet. Really taking care of our trans folks in this conversation, really taking care of our queer folks in this conversation. And so y'all, like, I want to acknowledge it. It ain't enough, but this is a limitation, at least in terms of my analysis. So I want to say that. But part of the thing that I hear from you, so it's not that I don't believe you, it's that I don't then know what we do with that. Because one, when I look at the way that Black women move around in the world, we absolutely think that y'all are redeemable. Like, we just keep on, that's why we keep on being in the streets. You go out there and pick any sister, that has any level of relationship with a brother, father, brother, cousin, uncle, dude, her guy, and then ask her some shit she done been through, and she will tell you some terrible fucking stories, but she is like, George Floyd did not deserve to die, and we out here, and these white people are not gonna keep killing our brothers, right? Like, there's a way that Black women can like hold a bunch of hurt and pain, a bunch of terribleness, and still go out and protest. So we don't actually have a politics and practice that says that we don't think you're redeemable, that says that we think that the harm is already done, that there is no redemption, that there is no healing. All the fluffy Black girls be like, let's talk about healing, right? I don't like to talk about healing because I don't understand. But you know what I mean? But they like to talk about that. They're like, healing, justice, and, so I'm like over here trying to do yoga and be mindful and do, trying to figure, like, I surround myself with fluffy people, even though I'm not fluffy, because I suspect that they are right, but I don't always know how to invite it, right? So there's that. I don't know what that means. With that being said, I'm also like, but what is the other side of it? Because if the other thing that you said is true, which is that brothers do harm, and that the most that we can expect in this world is harm reduction, should I be in any sort of relational configuration with somebody that's offering me only harm reduction? Because if it's only harm reduction, then I'm committing on the front end, if I know that, to harm, right? And in a lifetime where I've already experienced harm, I don't have a lot of, my mama helped me with this one time. My mama went through a lot, I've written about some of it in one of my books, and my mom was probably watching, so I'm not trying to put all her business on blast, but she just said to me, she said, look, at some point you get to a point where some stuff you're just not going to put up with anymore, right? And I took that to mean that either it's going to be me or it's going to be them, but I'm not going to put up with anybody harming me anymore. Because there are ways that if Black women's expectation of Black men that the best they can do for us is harm reduction, that's why our relationships are already fucked up. We already working from that assumption that the best that many brothers can do is harm reduction. And I'm saying that, to me, that's not good enough. Like, that's not good enough. That's a political calculation that Black women often make. But that's, to me, a fundamentally unjust political calculation. That if I'm listening to a brother like you, you're thoughtful, you do this work, you're trying to undo stuff, and the farthest you think you can get is harm reduction, then what does that mean as an intimate justice project for a Black woman who is in any mode of relationship with you, whether familial or romantic or platonic? If what she has to concede on the front end is that there's going to be some harm, like, that feels like untenable to me.
Can I jump in with a potentially controversial thought that I'm like forming as a part of this conversation? I'm asking for permission because I don't know where this is about to. Where this is gonna go.
Y'all family now.
So just a couple of things. So I think one thing that I want to take a step back from is thinking about how Black women show up for Black men as a side of like love. Because I think it's also patriarchy. I think a lot of Black women show up because they think that Black men should be strong, should be head of the household. We got to protect our Black men. They're always under attack. So it's there's sometimes that gets lost in the Black women like will ride for Black men. Some of that's love, some of that is also patriarchy, and it has to be undone like on all sides of the conversation. And sometimes I get so nervous that without acknowledging like the patriarchal underpinnings of that, we just get to essentialize Black women as being riders and essentialize Black men as being harmers. And I think that there's a way to think about that like that just takes into account that we're all doing this under a very, very, very violent system. So I thought that was controversial at first, but maybe it's not. I see some head nods, I see some touching agrees. Okay.
Can I respond to that just real quick?
Yes.
Yeah, just real quick. You know what I mean? Like when I hear her speak, I hear the hurt and I hear the pain, and I completely understand, right? I understand. I can empathize with you know what she's expressing. I know it isn't necessarily directed towards me. I don't take it personal. You know what I mean? And so with that being said, I look at, and this just coming from the background of me being a therapist, right? I guess I'll throw that out there. Just it's this when I talk about harm reduction, right? I look at the idea that human beings are fallible, right? Like we gonna do some shit to fuck up other people. It's just it's a part of the game, you know. I use that phrase. It's a part of the game, and so ideally you want to minimize that. Whether it's men, women, men, whether it's trans person, non-binary, regardless, in my opinion, right? We want to minimize what that harm looks like. So for me, at the age of 25 and me not being truthful in relationships and being deceitful and what have you, now me being 36, that part of me, I can't undo that harm that I did to that sister, right? I can't. But me moving forward, I recognize that, you know what, Phil, I have to do the internal work to be better when I show up for my partner now. And so I know my interactions with her at times might be harmful. And I think when we have this idea of harm, it might be, you know, whether it's, we all have our own individual definition of what harm looks like. Right. And so there might be a comment that I might make that I might not fully develop and think through. It might be a behavior and not taken into consideration. Like when she came in today, right? She came in, she working. I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I've been in the crib. I realized I didn't clean up the crib today, right? I realized that. I realized a part of me is taking her for granted with that, right? I look at that as harm. And so, yeah, it might be on the continuum. It's all the way on the left, right? But again, it's that awareness piece. So I don't necessarily know if it. I think we harming each other, right? I think that's just the nature of being a human being, right? And again, if we can minimize what that harm looks like, then yeah, I think we can have healthy relationships, because I think healthy relationships, there still may be some harm there.
I'm so sad I have to hop off. I really want to be a part of this conversation. I'm so hungry, y'all. I haven't ate like 13 hours, but this is recorded, and I feel comfortable about that because y'all not the feds. So thank you so much for this invitation. I'll watch it later.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I'm hanging with y'all until Bay comes. So that's not, look, sometimes I just have to say this to people because, you know, Black girls, you know, with attentive bays, it's a good thing. Feminist Black girls with attentive bays, it's a good thing. So.
I just want to jump in on that part. I think here's the part I think about is, yes, so we definitely, as humans, we tend to harm each other. That's something that we tend to do. But I also think we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we can stop doing, right? I think, you know, it's kind of like It's not like when somebody says, I ain't gonna go to jail no more. They can stop that. They actually just like figure shit out, right? I think men can figure out how to stop harming Black women. I think that shit is, we have the power to do that. You know what I mean? I think that particularly those who have of age and have had some sort of experience, like we have the power to stop doing that shit and recognize, and also you have the power to recognize the very different ways we do it so we can stop doing it. Like we have that capability. I just don't think we do it. I don't think we care enough. I don't think it matters as much. I think we can figure out ways to be distracted by other things. That's why I don't think it happens. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think it doesn't happen in terms of us harming. Because no question, people harm each other. I mean, that's just sadly what we do. But there's a particular way in which we sort of like intentionally use our own harm that happens to us and transmit it to women. I think it's a way we intentionally do that, right? We know, we used to hear the old story, a guy goes to work, he gets frustrated with all this stuff at work, and racism comes home, beats his wife. And we're like, oh, once upon a time, people sort of thought that made sense, right? I thought it was like, yeah, he was dealing with that, so that's why he would do it. And then at some point, our consciousness raised, hope collectively was like, no, that shit don't make sense, and stop it. You know what I mean? And stop it. I just think that part of what I feel is, I particularly now in my own personal evolution, I just sort of like understand my power. Like I just sort of understand it, and like it's a good thing. And I understand my power is on both of the spectrums. I have the power for tremendous harm, and I got the power for tremendous good. Like I'm aware of that. I'm like much more aware of it, and I don't deny either one, right? And I think like that power now enables me to make choices differently, particularly ones that I have control over. We have control over who we yell at, cuss at, harm, particularly people we say we love. Like that, if you love somebody, you made a conscious choice at some point to say I love them, whether it be familial, relationally, what have you. You have some consciousness about you say I love this person for whatever reason that may come up. Then if you say that, then you also have the consciousness and the power to determine what that love would look like. Not only what it looks like for you, but what does it look like for that person? Like what do they need? And they don't need you to harm them. You know that. We know that. Come on, we all know that. You know what I mean? We know that.
Can we just talk about the different types of harm that we're discussing right now? Just so we can see like a full spectrum of these types and these different ways that we harm women and each other.
That's a question to me. That's a like clarifying question to me.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to jump in. I mean, not jump in. I just want to finish off. I'm already jumped in. I think another much more sort of less than topical way that we do it is in the ways we speak about these issues. I mean, Brittany jumped on it at the get-go, right? Like the way we address these issues also way is harming. We're not saying I'm doing something to you. We're not putting our hands, cussing you out or nothing. But just like, the acting almost as if we're oblivious to it, and we're not oblivious to it, right? I think that's another way we do it, and we can stop that. That's the only thing I just want to let go. Like we can literally stop that.
Welcome, Damon. Thank you for joining us. You're muted. There you go.
Can we add gaslighting? Gaslighting is the form of emotional abuse that I think brothers do the most to sisters. It's the minimization. It's the treating us like we're crazy. It's the doing stuff, and then to us, whether being disaffirming, whether being insulting, whether being not attentive, and then not owning it. Right? It's super passive aggressive, and so it makes you feel crazy because you have a version of reality, and the brother never affirms that and just always tells you that you don't know what you're talking about. Like I tell my students all the time. I had a brother who told me when I was dating him many years ago, he says, you're smart, you're book smart, you read lots of books, you know what they say, but I'm naturally intelligent, right? And by which he meant he was a thinker, great original thought and capacity, and that basically what I did was sort of regurgitate. And when I then called him on it and said, like, what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say I'm not intelligent? You're trying to say I don't have any original thoughts? And he was like, that's not what I said. I said that you were smart. But that's that's gaslighting, like straight up. It's super manipulative. It's a way to minimize. And so I find that brothers play those games. So I think that that's a form of harm. I think that it's a form of harm when y'all don't do your emotional work. I think about how much emotional work sisters do before they enter any conversation. That a lot of the sisters I know who have really done their work, they done thought about all the ways that you gonna react to the thing they gonna say, and what way to when to tell you, and how you gonna feel about it, and then they gonna analyze it with their. So there's been a strategy session before the conversation with homegirls about how to say the hard thing, and then there's the saying the hard thing, and then there's a processing how the conversation went, where all the micro interactions are analyzed. At least if you live in my world, that's how this goes. And that's a whole sort of life committed to the emotional work of managing relationships with men on the assumption that they're going to do less emotional labor than you're going to do. And that to me is a form of injustice. And it's super harmful. I mean, of course, there's the physical forms of harm. The last thing though is I always think, and I have this new book I'm trying to work out where I'm trying to think about love, and I just want to think about whether sometimes when we say that love is what we need, if what we really need is care, like, because I sometimes feel like people use love to countenance all the work that they don't do, like Black women will show up to movements or relationships and say, well, we're doing it out of love, even though they know that those movements or relationships will be not reciprocal, right? Or even to damaging institutions, and we'll say, well, those institutions don't love us, but we love this work, we love our people, so we do it. And it becomes the way, or you're being raggedy or you're not showing up, but you just say to somebody, I love you, but you don't do it in action. And so there's a way that love can, when is used haphazardly, to keep us tethered to each other, even when we're not doing each other right. And I just wonder whether what we are really asking for, and whether what we really want more of, is a kind of carefulness with each other, which at base is care, because care involves intention, right? I see you and I recognize that you deserve to be dealt with a level of intentionality, and with some sense that you are fragile, that you are breakable, and so I want to handle with care. Where love, we just toss that word around and don't always mean it, and don't always understand the contours of it, and we use that word to do a whole lot of the other kind of work that we don't want to do, politically and personally. And I don't know if care is the word, but I know that I'm very skeptical of the moments when love gets invoked, because I feel like folks just let it be the stand-in for all the things that they're not sure that they can demand, but all of the expectations that they want to have met. And I just think that if that's the word we're going to use, then in that moment, then we need to do a lot of work around what constitutes love, right?
Thank you. Anybody else? Benet, you got something?
I feel like
anyone?
Hold up.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say I feel like I've been talking
fruits and shit back there. You
oh, go ahead.
You want to say nothing, bro? Can I get an avocado or something? Take that man.
Am I still on mute? Oh, am I muted? Yeah, man. This is the best. This is the best spot in the house for light. Anywhere else I try to do it, it's dark and I just don't have the right visibility. Plus the kids are upstairs and they're doing stuff like bedtime preparation stuff. So I got to be in front of the avocados, in front of the calendar, in front of the bananas. I think there's a plantain back here too. So trying to keep it healthy.
I was just going to speak on the what does harm look like. What I experience in my work with brothers is, again, that unresolved trauma, as Brittany said, not doing the work, right? Again, they've been resolved with, this is how I'm going to cope, this is how I'm going to deal with life, right? So even at 35, at 40, at 50, at 70, brothers are still letting their 8-year-old self, their 15-year-old self, their 30-year-old self show up in situations, you know what I mean? And so yeah, which can be harmful if you aren't taking the necessary steps to do the inner work, because, you know, again, I don't like that word toxic, but you know, you're an unhealthy human being, right? And so you're going to project that on to others. And again, the feedback that I've heard from brothers is just that idea of safety. I don't know if Brittany will come at me about that word safety, but just that idea about feeling safe, right? And when I say safe, you know, we feel the effects of the quote unquote patriarchy that we're in, right? And so we're exhibiting behaviors related to it. And so again, with the spaces that I hold for brothers, it's a lot of times where it's just like they haven't felt comfortable, no matter whether it's fictional or it's made up or what have you, that a space where they can, again, just be a place where they can say it might not be politically correct, it may be offensive, but this is the only way they know how to get it out. And so whether that's in therapy sessions or what have you. And so I think that's not doing that necessary work will continue the harm that's being done to Black women and the harm that's being done to Black persons. You know what I mean? So
we touched on something earlier. I think Phil mentioned it. He said that we're resilient, and it got me to thinking, like, we're resilient at what cost? Like, what is this resilience going to win for us at this point? Like, what is it going to take for us to get past resilience? Like, what does resilient mean in these situations? So, Damon, anybody can jump in at any time. So let's see.
Yeah, all right. I mean, that's a funny word, like resilience, because I was even just thinking about that today with, you know, just all the fuck shit that we dealing with right now. And my bandwidth is spent right now, but it can't be, because I got a family, I got obligations, I got goals, I got dreams. So it's like, on one hand, yeah, all this stuff is going to weigh you down. All this stuff can weigh you down, but it's like, you gotta find a way to keep moving and keep pushing. And I guess the function of my occupation too, where I I can't remove myself from the stuff that's happening. Like, I have to continue to figure out different ways to write about it, different takes, different angles or whatnot. And again, it does, you know, it does really, like, fuck with you. And I don't know how to fill up those resilience reservoirs. Like, once it's depleted, then what happens then? Particularly what happens then if, and I know this is true for a lot of us, there's an ecosystem around you, you know, where not just the people in your home are dependent on you, but you're paying tuition, you're paying phone bills, you're paying gas bills, you know what I mean? And you're giving cash out here and there. And it's like, on one hand, I recognize I'm privileged, you know, where I have, you know, I have the means to be able to do that stuff. And my people don't have to go to other people, they can come to me. But at the same time, it's like, that is the reality for a lot of us, where once that reservoir is gone, then it's gone. And it's not just gone for you, it's gone for, you know, it reverberates, it's gone for a dozen people around you. And right now, I guess, particularly with this Rona shit that we fuck with, I'm just trying to find it and try to keep it there. I mean, I like it almost to like a video game where you have I'm not a video game person. I don't even know why I'm using this analogy, but a video game, when you have like some sort of power reservoir or whatever that you're able to call on when you need it. And you know, I just think that a lot of us is on fumes right now. And but the thing is, that's been our reality for, like, I don't know what it means to not be on fumes. Like, I don't know what it means to like have a full tank and just be good and just be able to subsist off of that. So yeah, resilience. It's a funny word to me because I feel like that's embedded in our reality where you can't not be that.
Right.
Yeah, can I just say something about that right quick? And I think it's so important that, Damon, you saying that, because, you know, during the first, I said this to you already, but during the first few days of the pandemic, I think a lot of us who people would count on to write just weren't or couldn't write. And so we were looking at the scribes who could write, right? And so one thing that I see in you, I see in Brittany, that I see in Benet, and I see in Marlon is that, yeah, we can talk about what it means to like persevere and persistence and what and shit, but it necessitates, I'm not trying to get too literary, but it necessitates like different forms. Do you know what I mean? So like sometimes you go straight into an article, you go straight into the trauma. You wrote a piece the other day that began with like at least 600 LOLs, right? Like that to me is a change of form. Like when I see Brittany on MSNBC, like running that form, I expect and I see, thankfully, a different part of her. Like when I read an essay or when I read a book, and I think we call that multitasking and being blah, 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 blah. But I think at the end of the day, it's like the necessity of Black folks to sort of like be virtuosos of different forms because of the necessity of that persistence. You know, and I think we call that side hustle and shit, which it partially is. But, you know, I think a lot of it also is just like the necessity of changing form to give us a variation of entryway into the shit that like is harmful. What y'all think about that?
He just drops it out there. It's not told.
Dope. I think it was dope.
You know, that's super helpful.
No.
That's the thing I think when I like, particularly when I read What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker. Like, I thought that, Damon, like it's the thing I thought is I was like, oh wow, this is like, I mean, I've been, you know, reading for over 10 years at this point, but I really was, you know, so it's been nice to watch her evolution as a writer, but I definitely felt like, oh, this form lands differently for me. You know what I mean? Like, so when I read Kiese, I see like the like, you know, it's the Southern girl thing. It hits all those notes for me. So it's like a new Black Southern form, right? In a way that I deeply fuck with. And then, but when I read Damon, like, I don't know. I'm like, oh no, people don't write essays like this is some different shit with the essayist form that I also hear. The thing I think I struggle with as a writer in this moment is feeling the need to find that level in my own writing and sensing it, but not all knowing how to reach it, right? You know what I mean? Like sensing that there's the, you know, like how to be guided by the past and not held hostage to it. And also sensing that in the moment where, like, I appreciate you really saying, like, well, we just tapped out. Like, I feel exhausted and tapped out. I don't feel like, I mean, because here's the thing, a lot of the shit that we're saying today is remixes of shit we've been saying. Like, we've been screaming into the wind about this stuff. Like, I feel super tapped out. I feel super unoriginal anytime I try to write. I was, you know, I was feeling like as a writer, this is a moment where we should be saying something. But all I've been doing is sitting in my house and like trying to figure out how to make sourdough bread and you know, trying to start a garden on my patio because because I'm a country girl and I got like an ancestral reading that said like you are from deep South rural people and you need to grow things. And I'm like, well, I'm terrible at it because my basil is dying, my parsley is dead, like, you know, all of this stuff. So like, so even figuring out new forms in that way has felt super hard. And so what do you do? Looks like my public writing career, like in a national, like publication started with the death of Trayvon Martin. Like that's when I started writing for Salon in 2013 because George Zimmerman had been acquitted. And so I started writing, and then I literally just spent the next 2 years writing mostly about Black men killed by the police and the police doing fuckery. And so in this moment, I feel like I should write. I should have something eloquent to say, but there's some way in which I feel like, well, how many different ways can you say, don't kill us, we matter? Like, how do you keep finding a new way to say it? So creatively, I'm happy for the pause because I feel like I just need a replenishment. And because what I feel is utterly exhausted, and like the ways in which we were working before were not sustainable for anybody across the board. And I also feel like I resent when people call Black people resilient, because underneath it, what I hear, is a like, well, we gonna see how much we can take from you and you still live. How little can we give you and you still keep getting up? Which basically means that either you live, like they're just saying that you didn't die from this, so you're resilient. It's like that's not the standard, right? And so I'm like, is that the thing? Is that we work until it almost kills us, and then we cheer about the fact that we barely survived, and then we call that shit resilience? Because that feels like a failure, not a win, right?
And then we never call it sick. You know what I'm saying? Like, we never call that shit sick. And I just think that has everything to do with what we've been talking about, interpersonal relationships. And it's probably too late in the conversation, but also if you add parental relationships to this sort of nexus, the thing about parental relationships is, like, I do hear the lexicon of care coming out of parents' mouths, right? Like, more than I hear love, care. And I think, one of the problems we have in this country is, like, we have a parental problem. And so anyway, I just that's a long-winded way of saying amen. So yeah.
I wanted to hear you say more about that. Well, say more about the parental problem.
Because I think the hard part about, like, I just think there's so many overlaps. Like, when I was growing up, my father could say he was a good father because every now and then he sent child support. Meanwhile, everything you described about gaslighting, about various kinds of abuse, what's happening to my mom, my mom would even be like, oh, he was a good father because he cared for his son. But I don't even know how much, like, can you care for your child and be a good parent if you were terrorizing that other parent, like that child's parent? I think not, right? But what I'm interested in is, like, even if you're talking about replacing love for care, I just think if you just, like, I hear parents talk often about care, but I think the thing that we don't talk about, and this is not just about beating your child's ass, because that is just the easiest way to talk about parental abuse, is, like, I just don't think we talk about the ways that very fucking tired, harmed, and harmful parents are, like, terrorizing children while trying to fucking, like, not be terrorized by police and interpersonally, whatever. And so I just wonder, like, I think even the word care has to be remixed if we think about it in a parental way. You see what I'm saying, Brittany?
Yeah, I take your push. And it's also, look, I also find the parenting critiques to be hard to hear because my bias is towards Black women, and what I hear, like, how do you talk about how do we both own that we all know some trash Black women, and at the same time own that there's this sort of massive assault on the Black, bad Black mothering is considered, like, so it's absentee Black fathers and bad pathological Black mothers who don't raise children who are equipped to sort of deal with the world, right? I mean, there's so much in that mothering discourse that is hard, that it is hard. And I find that perhaps I offer more grace to Black women than maybe they deserve, because
Black mothers. You're talking about Black mothers?
Yeah, Black mothers, Black women who are mothers. Yeah, I offer them more grace because in the toughness and roughness that I hear a different thing in the toughness and roughness sometimes than, there's a way in which people call stuff abuse. Like, I'm not saying you get to undermine and demean your child and mistreat them and tell them they ain't gonna be shit and beat the crap out of them all the time, right? but the gruffness sometimes, or the like, even the push to just get up and keep on going, right? You know, there's a way. So like I say this thing in my book about my mama. So my mama started leaving me alone in the house when I was 7. Because 7. Today we would be like, what do you mean? Because we see 7-year-olds and they're so little, right? They're so little, the little terrors, right? They're so little munchkins. But it's like, you know, but that was the choice. It was either create a life for us or pay daycare. And there was no difference. There was no middle ground. And so she raised a kid who at 7 could come in the house and start her homework and lock the door and not let anybody in. But, you know, but now I'm living through a quarantine, and much of my life has been lived alone, right? Much of my adult life has been lived alone. And so in many ways, I feel like I was trained for the Black girl life that I have, right? Trained to sort of be able to face the world, even if I had to stand on my own 2 by myself. And I've said to my mama, who can sometimes be hard on other mamas, I've said to her, based on today's standards, people would think you were a terrible mother. And what I know, and based upon what, you know what I mean? And so how do we hold all the things? So like, I don't want to call problematic behavior bad, but some of the stuff, because the other side of it is sometimes I see kids and I'm like, y'all don't have no boundary. Like, so on the one hand, we're like, you be in the conversation. Then I think, but y'all don't have no boundaries though. So like, cause there's a care in the like, but grown folks are talking, right? When we say that, so in today's parenting world, we say that you're excluding kids and you're being authoritarian and exercising power. But I hear in that a like, don't grow up too fast because the world is real hard when you're Black, right? So when my mama would yell at me, stay in a child's place, she is saying the world is hard for Black girls. You don't need to have all that right now, because when you have it, you're going to have it, right? And so we hear in that these other impulses that are problematic, but we don't hear the care in it. We just hear what's problematic about it. And I am like, when we tell Black girls not to be too grown, I don't mean fast. I don't like the fast critique, but the like, why you being so grown? It is like because Black girls don't get to be girls. And the only people that I hear, and so then Black communities have a discourse around protecting Black girlhood that we actually can't hear, because what we hear it as now with our wokeness is authoritarianism, right? And it's like, nah, it's just that no one else sees you as a girl. Everybody already sees you as too grown. And so we're trying to help you to have whatever little bit of girlhood you're going to get in a world that's not going to give you very much. And so like, how do you hold both things? And so when my mama read my book, you know, she called me and she said, man, I could have been a little more tender, you know, like, because my mama reckons, you know, my mama says stuff like, you know, I'm a better parent to you today than I was when you were a kid. I've learned who you are and how to parent you even now. And I appreciate that level of reflexivity. So she took the critique harder than I meant it. Like, you deserved more tenderness. And what I hear is like, but even with the lack of tenderness, is that like, were you not a good mama? Like, because what is, you know, like, so, because the bad Black mama narrative is the default narrative. I mean, and it's designed not to see the complicated negotiations. And so I just really struggle with how to hold both pieces around Black mothers.
One thing, you know, I appreciate you saying that, Brittany and KSA. But one thing that is definitely kind of shifted my perspective, you know, since being a parent, is realizing how much shit my parents did on the fly and had no idea what the fuck they was doing in the middle of doing it, because we don't, and we're just figuring shit out as it goes along, and recognizing that, realizing that does make space for some grace when you think about certain things that might have happened when you were 5 or 10 years old, and then you remember like, oh, my dad was 34 years old, my mom was 29. Of course they didn't know. Of course, you know, they had their own dreams and still have their own dreams, their own thoughts, their own ambitions. And then they have to raise this little tiny little human, little big-headed, egg-headed little nigga grabbing at their ankles. And again, that is having that perspective and recognizing that, you know, all the best practices, all the books, all the, you know, the advice that you get, it's helpful. You know, it's helpful as like just a general guide, but you know, once you are there, then it's like, oh shit, yeah, I just have so much more empathy for my parents now. And it's not that I was void of it before, you know, but now I just see that there's so much, like for instance, you know, if your parents put you on punishment, they don't want you to be on punishment. They want you to go. They want you to get out the house and go to Kennywood, go to the park, go. They don't want you to have to stay in the house. You know, they don't want to punish you. Parents that aren't abusive, you know, and I make that caveat, you know, for parents that are, because there are abusive parents who do stuff like that, but 99% of parents are just trying to do the best that they can. You know, it's like the fucking the chorus that Umi says, you know, just, you know, shining light on the world, just trying to, you know, I forgot I don't even know why I started that because I forgot the words just now, but y'all remember, y'all can Google. But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about just having that grace, you know, for parents, because again, it's a thing that I, you know, every day, particularly now when we're all in the house every day, all day. It is something that, you know, is developing. You know, I'm calling my dad every day. I would be calling my mom if she was here, like, yo, thank you. I get it. I got y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, I and just to piggyback briefly, yeah, it's that aha moment, man. Of like, you know, my daughter, she's 11, she graduates tomorrow, and you know, my mom, she's like, she has so much of your personality. I'm like, no, I wasn't like this, man. Like, nah. And so it took me, you know, once I committed to the therapeutic process, you know, the last couple years, you know, I would call my mom after every session and she like, all right, what did I do now? You know what I mean? And I'm like, nah, I get it, right? I didn't understand like your journey to get to where you were, and you truly were doing the best you could with what you had, right? And it took me that. It took some time, right? Because it was still things that I didn't understand. I think when I talk about the importance of doing the work, I still had some internalized anger about some of the decisions that she made that I may still not understand, right? But I still have the ability now to be able to show her that grace and say, nah, you know, it's not a manual. I recognize now, you know, I knew you were a foster child, but I never knew how that impacted you being a little black girl. You know, your mom wanted to throw you out the window and your 12-year-old little sister said, no, here, I'll take her. Right. I had no idea of the impact that had on you growing up and how that impacted you raising me and how you showed up and how it's impacting my parenting style. So, yeah, shout out to you, Rach.
So we hear all the time about the conversation that parents must have with their sons about how they go out into the world and interact with police and white folks and other, you know, authoritative figures. But what conversation should we have with our girls who navigate so much more and so many hidden dangers? Well, not really hidden anymore, but so many dangers that we really don't discuss out loud. Benet, Brittany, I want you guys to really start this one off.
I'm not a parent, so I can only say what I guess I would imagine I would tell a daughter. For me, the number one thing would be to not interact with the police or talk to them at all. Good, bad, or indifferent, like say nothing, particularly if they find themselves being stopped or in some type of trouble, to evoke their right to not speak and wait until they can get an attorney. I think it's a complex conversation, because I understand, of course, telling, Black boys and Black girls, you just have to get home, just get home. That's your number one priority. But for me, it's troubling to instill kind of this justifiable fear of being afraid of the police. And I guess I say that as someone who literally, the day that George Floyd was killed, had to circle my block and pull up on the police because they were arresting a Black man, and it looked like they were detaining him like in an unlawful way. They were roughing him up. And I needed to bear witness to that, to hopefully prevent another Black man from being a hashtag. And the police came over, and he, initially he was fine, but he started getting annoyed. He's like, I don't mind you recording, but this is a wanted man. And I said, well, I don't care about anything pertaining to him being wanted. I'm here to bear witness and make sure another Black man isn't killed. And he said, well, I'm a Black man too. I'm a Black man too. And this is a dangerous situation. I can get killed. How he jumped to that conclusion where he could be killed while this brother was in the back seat of a squad car handcuffed, the cognitive dissonance, and that was really alarming. But I didn't back down. You're not going to talk to me any kind of way just because you're an officer. I'm not afraid. My voice is not shaking. You don't move me. You don't instill fear in me. And I was this way in New York. I talked recklessly to NYPD often. And I understand the position that puts me in. And I'm not saying that we tell Black children, boys or girls, to do that. I'm saying I don't know, because I have trouble instilling like this fear from a young age in police officers, where they're almost giving up their voice, giving up their agency at such a young age. Kind of learning that fear is very troubling for me. And so I said all that to say, I don't know. I don't have the answer. I don't know that how I've been operating with the police as someone who has had my own experiences in the criminal justice system and being arrested more than once. And having been arrested because of my mouth. Times where I could have definitely gotten out of something, but did not, because Benet just had to have the last word. I don't know that that's been wise, but I'm not going to be fearful. I just cannot live like that. I cannot operate in this world as a Black woman and be fearful of police. I can be aware, I can understand, I can take the time to think clearer. I'm older now, so I'm a lot calmer. So I can think and process through how I could potentially escalate a situation, but I can't live in fear, and I can't sit here confidently and say that we should kind of instill that caution, which is really fear, in the police and our children.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I have to run. I have a call at 8. I want to hear the responses to this, though, because I feel like it's so different than mine. So I'm saying bye now, but I want to hear the couple of the responses, and then I'm out.
Go ahead. You want to say something, Marla? I saw you was reaching, about to hit the button.
Yeah, the mute button. So I wanna underscore what you said, Benet, because I come from a place of, at least an organizer, where we know your rights campaigns, and the talk. Though I never had a talk, even at this day, as at my age, my father may not remember a lot, but he always remembers to tell me when I'm leaving his house, be careful out there, right? And I don't agree with that. I just don't, I'll be bothered. For our children, period, I just don't agree with the notion of telling them that they have to somehow contort themselves in a way for survival. I want to tell my kids to be powerful at all instances. Be powerful. Powerful doesn't mean if a cop stops me, I'm going to spit in his face. Powerful looks different ways at different times. I want my children to be powerful. I don't want them to. White kids don't tell their kids that. And they do all the type of shit. And I understand there's obviously the racial animus there, but I'm just saying that I don't believe in perpetuation the notion that police are more powerful than you. I just don't believe in that. They're not. They literally not. You know what I mean? Like, that's a false notion. They're not. You know, that's why we say don't hide behind the badge. You know they're not. And I think I just feel at this point, when we tell our young folks that they need to have a certain particular type of phrases to use to get them out of a situation, when we see people use all the phrases and still get the shit happen to them, we're telling them a false, we're being untrue. We're being untrue, and we're saying, and we're being untrue, and we're not telling them the truth is that no matter what you say, you can be mistaken for somebody who should be dead. Period. So why give them some special words that that's not respected? So I mean, I agree with you, Benita. I personally, I don't have children, but I have my little niece, and I said she's powerful. Now I tell her that all the time, like, you are powerful, and that she can take that wherever she goes with it. As a 5-year-old girl, I don't want to ever instill a notion, at least not intentionally, into any young person that they are less than anybody.
Yeah. Me being a father of as I said, a 11-year-old little girl, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. To be honest, I think I'm doing a okay job, even though I'm extremely hard on myself, because of the ideas about the black father. So that shows up in every interaction that I have with my daughter. One of the things that I was keen on, and it's not just endemic to little girls, but I needed her to have a voice, right? And I needed to be intentional about that. And so I never wanted to be the dad that said to do something because I said so, right? I always wanted to allow her the opportunity to respond, right? Because I know how the world is going to treat her, right? And I didn't want her to dumb herself down in any way. So I always wanted to give her the opportunity to be able to have discussion. Now, again, she still might have had to go on and do it, but I wanted her to feel comfortable, because even though I don't want her to necessarily see me as a quote unquote authority figure, that's still a piece of me at times. And so I saw that work that's been happening for the last 10 years manifest itself when she switched schools. Because now, she left the public schools and she now goes to a Christian school. And in seeing how they were describing her, and they were using some of the most derogatory terms, which, infuriated me. But I was proud that she stood up for herself and that she didn't remain silent, even though these are adults. I had to remind her that, yes, we still have to follow directions, but you're still a person. You still deserve to be heard. And, and no matter what they've tried to do to stifle her voice in that specific setting, by using the Bible, and again, that's not my wheelhouse, and I question why, whether she'll be going back there, honestly. But I knew that was the one thing that I needed her to understand and have her to have confidence in, which is her voice. And the person that she sees the most and who's supposed to quote unquote love her the most, I couldn't be the one to dumb her down in any way. I also try to be as affectionate as possible with her. She hates when I hug her. She'll put her head out so I could kiss her hair. And so, that's her thing. But I'm like, nah, come here, give me a hug. Give daddy a hug, give daddy a kiss, because this is okay. I don't want you to grow up to think that intimacy in any type of way is unhealthy or you're not used to it, right? It's that idea of, the dad is her, her first experience with the man. And so, yes, I've had my moments where I didn't make the best decisions, right, during conversation, But again, I hope, and we talk about that harm aspect, but I hope what I do and the encouragement that I offer and just the undying love and support that when she's in her therapist chair at 32, she's able to sit back and say, damn, you know what I mean? My pop, he really cared about seeing me, right? Matter of fact, he saw me, right? And I think a lot of kids don't feel seen by their parent, and she probably still don't feel seen anyway with me saying all that. But yeah, man, that's just really been the biggest thing for me, her voice and showing her just affection.
I'm gonna make this last comment and jump off. Thank y'all so much for having me and for the opportunity to chop it up. Brother Phillip, I like talking to you. I like your thoughtfulness. As a non-hugger, I'm gonna say to you that if your daughter doesn't want your hugs, then don't make her hug you, because your intentions are good, but she is learning lessons about consent. And one of the things that I actually think we do a lot of work when I'm teaching undergrads in my Intro to Gender, Race, and Sexuality course is that we have to start teaching kids very early that whatever bodily autonomy is the key to freedom, and whatever boundaries she sets around her body, you have to respect them, because that actually is a more powerful lesson than that your good intentions override her desires, right? And so I recognize that you're saying she needs love and intimacy, but part of the thing you have to trust that you're doing is you have to let her set the terms of what that physical intimacy looks like. It's super important for Black girls to be able to determine the bounds of their physical intimacy, because they are highly overrepresented for sexual violence. And so you're trying to teach healthy touch, but the key to healthy touch is consent. That she has to be able to say what the yes or the no is. And so even if you really want to give her the hug, you can say, look, you can literally say it to her like, if you want me to kiss you on the head, then that's what I'm going to do. I would like to give you a hug because I want to hug you, but I'm not going to force you to take it. And in that moment, you invite her you give her the opportunity to choose what kind of touch she wants. It's a lot of having to negotiate, but it's her body, right? So I want to say that because I don't like being hugged. And I have people who tell me that there's something wrong with me and that I should like it. But what I want is to be able to choose who gets to touch me and when, because I had unhealthy hugs from male figures when I was a kid, or from one in particular. And I was like, oh, my boundaries will always be respected around that. And so I want to offer that as the prelude to saying the thing that I wanted to say about state violence, which is that I really concur with this idea that, hey, I don't fucking know what you say. I mean, how do you tell your kids to interact with like state actors that just might kill them on a whim, right? So I don't know that there is a thing that you say. And my own track record of interactions with police is that they have often escalated quite quickly. In college, I had a brother cop threaten to beat me with his baton because he escalated. We left something in a Walmart. We pulled up in the fire zone, and so my girl could run in and get her wallet. The security guard gave us permission and pulled in behind us, and the cop on a power trip sort of pulls up, yells and screams. He doesn't have the authority to tell you can park here. So I'm trying to just explain to the cop like what's going on, and he's just steadily escalating. And so then I escalated because I'm like, you power tripping, you're not actually trying to protect us. And I recognize that my trigger is around people who abuse power. So I can't say that I've had any pristine interactions with police, because I see them as people who have lots of power and who then like to play victim, and then who use their power and abuse it. And that is a trigger. So what I would hope for my kid is that I would raise them in such a way that they are acutely aware, great observers of people, great observers of what makes people tick, and that they're able to use that information to determine what the nature of the interaction is going to be, so that if you're tuned in, then you can de-escalate at the moment that you need to, and you can also use your voice when you need to. Those are the kind of like just more intuitive skills that I think Black people have. Like I think Black people are great readers of situations, and we're great readers of white people and their capacity. And I want my kid to have that sense, like that just super smart. Like we know more about white people than they know about themselves. We know when they're agitated. We know when they're going to escalate. We know when they don't like us. We know when they think they like us and they still really don't. Like we know all of that shit about white people. And I think that we have to teach our kids that that's a literacy that they have that is for survival. And I was asked to. There was a question in the comments about Black men's reaction to Sandra Bland, which I said a bit about at the top of this conversation. You know, brothers were put off because Sandra Bland spoke up for herself. She didn't play nice, and she ended up dead. And what I think about that is that I both understand the trauma that informs Black men's rage. I understand the sexism that informs their rage, the way that they see Black women as stupid and dumb. They see women as dumb, and so they're like, "Well, that was a stupid thing to do. Why wouldn't you just be logical and keep it cool?" I see the lack of empathy that informs their rage, the sense that Black men very often deeply sense that racism comes for them the worst, even when they know better. And I also, sense that or ask of brothers more solidarity, more tuning in to how Black women experience state violence, and more work around what it means to support us. And so I just want to echo that I think we should raise strong daughters and sons and children, non-binary, trans, that have a clear sense of self-possession and know that, part of the reason I show out so bad, like with people and don't really give a fuck most of the time, is because I very frequently hear my mother in one ear, my grandmother in the other ear, just being like, "Baby, we raised you. And even though you come from super rural, super modest circumstances, you are somebody, and who you are, you belong to us. We love you. We will take shotguns. We will pop caps in people's asses. We will ride out for you. We've got your back. And don't you ever bow to anybody." And I didn't learn that in a PhD program. I didn't learn that from a book. I learned that watching my mama go to work every day. And I learned that sitting on the porch with my grandmama and watching her square up against the sheriff's department, right? And so because of that, I just have a clear sense that I'm not going to shrink. And I think when that shows up in our kids, then they figure out all of the ways to navigate their power. And that's what I hope, that whatever kind of kid I might have, that they will just have a clear-cut sense that they come from Black people who love them and who love being Black, and that is the thing that will carry them through. So thank y'all so much. It's a pleasure. See y'all later. It's good to see you all.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care, Brittany. Now my wife's leaving, so all the women are gone.
I'll be back.
Not have a quorum.
Right, exactly. And I'm here as long as y'all here. I need an ass bag already, but I'll be all right.
I got 15 minutes.
You got 15?
Yeah, let's cut that. Use that 15. Yeah.
All right, so let's go through that last 15 then.
Yeah.
And
can I'm sorry, Alex. Can I say something, man? And look, people know I'm sensitive, man. I'm sensitive, and I don't. That's just who I am. I embrace it. I lean into it, right? And so they say the devil lives in the comment sections. I'm not going to say that. I see that people, they have their opinion, right? And so I think we only get a glimpse into people's lives based on the information that they give, right? And so I take my relationship with my daughter very seriously, very serious rather. And so, I fully agree with this idea of consent. So I don't take what she's saying personal, but again, I'm always about, I'm sensitive about my shit, right? And I'm sensitive about who I am and how I may be portrayed because I've worked so hard, right? And I've done a lot of work. And so whatever perceptions that people might have about my relationship with my daughter, again, I probably need to do some more work. So then I don't let this bother me because I know exactly what it is that I'm doing and I know what I'm teaching my daughter. But yeah, some of y'all comments nonsense. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But my bad, brother. My bad.
Because it's my wife actually wrote the note while you were talking. It said he took consent from her.
No, but that's not, again, I think we're talking about understanding the nuances of relationships, right? And so if we sit here and we saw the interaction and people understood the relationship that I have with my daughter, right, and how we give it up. Now, maybe I didn't do a picture perfect job of conveying that in the midst of the 30 seconds that I had, but a lot of times, and we fall victim to this a lot, and I understand that it's well intentioned, because there are a lot of people out there who aren't gaining the consent from a child. They aren't gaining a consent from another adult, right? But I think we can't just blanketly say you're taking consent from her, right? Based on,
Since I said it.
No. I was reading it in the comments.
Myself on this is complete. Because there is an element of intent versus impact, right? So your intent is one thing, but the impact of that behavior is a longevity of things, right? So the intent was not to take the power and to probably empower her about intimacy and love, but the consequence is long-term that may be translated into a relationship difference. So that was my point.
No, I completely understand, but again, I think we take a snapshot, right? And we're not going to, perseverate on this or what have you.
Yeah, so
I think people take snapshots and formulate conclusions, right? Based on whatever they've learned or whatever they've experienced historically, and attribute it to every single relationship. And so what I'll say is, again, the relationship that I have with my daughter is very nuanced, right? It's very, I'll say that it's nuanced, and I think we need to do more of understanding, right, and probing more and to understand, right? Because so often, I think this goes to the bigger pictures, and I saw that
also eliminate the nuances of being a Black woman, right? So you took that element of us having an opinion on it, and because it's uncomfortable, it then becomes, well, you don't know the nuances. So it's almost like, and I'm not going to.
No, we're not going, because again, this is a conversation for sure.
But you take away the nuances of even us navigating the world as Black women, which means that your daughter more likely will have our experience than yours. Right. So there is some nuances in even that, and accepting that no one's judging your parenting. They're just offering a difference of opinion around how you made a decision. That's it.
And we'll get back to that.
Yeah. We I'm easy for us to have this conversation.
No doubt.
Emotional he said he's sensitive.
Yeah. Well, no, I know. Again, I know how I am, right? And the same passion, I bring the same passion to every conversation, every situation that I truly care about, right? So this isn't about. Go ahead. We could finish this. We could talk off there.
We'll go to another. We'll have that conversation next week.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marlon.
Yeah, I want to be sensitive. I'm thinking about, am I sensitive to the moment right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm open to critique for this. But sort of what happens even in these conversations is part of what happened today is we went from, sent to me is about state sanctioned violence. And it went to him. I said it's unscripted on my Facebook page, so it's unscripted. But I think it went to also how we treat each other and how we harm each other, and we know that's fact. We know that's a sad fact, but we know that's fact. And I think about when like regular gun violence, when gun violence happens in any community, what folks will often say, in police violence, when it happens, they'll say, well, y'all get mad over police, but what about what y'all do to yourselves? And obviously, that's BS, but I said I'm open to critique it. I'm just sort of, what I feel at this moment is we went from that to how we harm each other, and not denying we do. And we can do, and as I said earlier, we can stop doing that too. But at this moment, in this very moment, particularly with compounded trauma with the health crisis and Black people being killed, in terms of our feed, right? It's always happening, but it's in our feed. Everybody is everywhere as we scroll. Are we using this space in a way that's sensitive to the moment? And here's the thing, maybe anytime these things happen, we do have to look internally. Maybe that is too. Maybe we always have to look internally because this system that we live in is created of humans, right? So maybe we have to look internally, like how we are pushing it, how we're perpetuating it in our own microwave, in our own microwaves, in our own families, our own relationships, and how that's being sprouted out. Maybe that is one way. I just want to know if we are being sensitive to this moment.
I mean, yeah. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Turn off real quick.
Marlon, can you say a little bit more about, is your worry that we are not being sensitive to this moment? And I guess the question is, if every moment each of us are walking around with these compacted traumas and compacted joys, like what do we do with the fact that like this moment is similar to, 370,000 moments ago, and that like all of this shit is what we're carrying, right? And disseminating. So when you say like this moment, can you be like clear for me and make me understand what you mean by this moment?
Yeah. Like there are people right now in the streets in Minneapolis, right now. And those people are in that space of harming each other when they ain't right, when they aren't in the streets rebelling. They are doing that. Those same people are doing that same stuff at home or right now or on their texts or whatever. And we can hold both. So I get it. We can hold both. I'm just saying, like, and I also come into these conversations as not only as a writer, but as an organizer too. And was like, is that as an organizer, is that what the folks need right now? Not saying that there's ever a moment that we are divorced from all of those complexities. There's never a moment we're divorced from those complexities, meaning harms. But when we think about I think about this moments of triage. And when like Corona, when somebody rushes into the hospital right now, the doctor ain't like, well, they got, hopefully they not. The doctor ain't thinking about other things. They're thinking about we need to get them a respirator and whatever else they may need at that right now. That's what they need right now. Not, and they could have just came from cussing out somebody, stealing something, but right now they need to survive. And yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, Keith, but like that's where that came from.
I'll be real brief and like, I think my problem often with the moment conversations is that, I mean, we're humans, like we love spectacle, you know what I mean? And so I think like to make us, I think an inclination is to make a spectacle. I saw an inclination being made to make a spectacle of Mike Brown, of Trayvon, of Rakia, of Breonna. Do you know what I mean? Like of George, like you see. And so my hope sometimes is that these conversations that get into the nuance of who we are as Black people means that's also who all of those people were as Black people to a degree. I hope that can like move us past spectacle. But what you're making me wonder is like, is there utility in the spectacle? Is if the spectacle is what gets people out protesting, like, is there utility in that? Because my hope would be like, if we understand the complexity of human beings who are often like tortured and humiliated and murdered, that our response could be even more particular and stronger. But I don't know if that's true. That probably is Pollyanna-ish. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we need the spectacle of like, this is what we got to talk about right now. This person, this human Black body got murdered. The police are probably going to get off. But I wonder if it can hold the complexity of, like, can we make these motherfuckers who get murdered, because we are all like dying slowly every day at the hands of the state in various ways. Can we also like hold the complexity and still push back?
With that, I'm thinking, and just thinking about what everybody's saying right now is how you have to take the audience in account, right? And we're not on CNN in front of a bunch of white people having this conversation. This is among us. And if we're having this conversation among us, then we can have that nuanced conversation about harm reduction amongst us. And I don't think there's ever a wrong time for that. Because like you were saying, I mean, this is the 300,000th time that this has happened. And it will be 300,000 more times as long as we Americans in America. And so when is the right time? because it's always the wrong time, it feels like. Because there's, you know, like we were just getting over, you know, his name is, I'm forgetting his name. We were just getting over, you know, or just processing and just talking about, and just, you know, everybody was running for him, Ahmad, and doing all that. And then this week, and then there'll be something next week. And so how long do we wait to have those conversations about the harm reduction that we have control of? Because oh, go ahead. My bad.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Nah, and I'm gonna keep it a buck right now. Like, so before, when I was invited to do this, and there was like a list of possible prompts or questions, whatever. I think that one of them that had been asked was, you know, how I feel about this moment, and if I feel like a target's on my back. I might be conflating this conversation with another Zoom conversation I had earlier, but anyway, that was a question that was asked, and I don't feel any different right now. Like, the Rona got me all fucked up. That shit got me all fucked up. But this shit, I've done responded to it. I've done dealt with it. I've done thought about it. I've done mourn, you know, and I've and it's like, how many times can you live Groundhog Day again before you start thinking about, okay, what can we do within, again, this is a conversation with ourselves. What can we do here to maybe make our lives a little easier for us, to have a little bit more empathy? And again, I'm not saying that anyone here doesn't have that, doesn't have that space, but again, I don't know. I just feel like it's always the wrong time to have certain conversations. And it's like, so when does the right time start? Because if we're going to wait until a time where we're not being terrorized, then we're going to be waiting forever.
If I could just jump in again, I don't want it to evolve into a place of me singling out gender politic conversation away from the parenting conversation, right? I'm holding all of those things, right? I'm just saying, as I've been shot before. And in that moment, I need something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, and that's the only thing. Be clear, the time to talk about these issues are all the time, right? I want to be clear about that too. I'm just saying like, we have a Zoom meeting, a Zoom call. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that we are not supposed to be still writing about this. We're not supposed to be advocating or, you know, raising money for these issues. I just don't want that to be misconstrued. I'm saying that we call you to a protest. We call you to a protest for a reason. And I'm not saying this is called a protest, T. I'm just using that analogy. I said there's an organizer part of me. Because there's a writer part of me, that always understands we have to be able to make those in every sentence. You got to sort of make those nuance and address those things in every sentence. You know, I just said outside of this call, you asked me how I felt, and you asked all of us how I felt. You asked me, just me, you know, you asked all of us how we felt at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I guess the assumption was what was happening. That was the assumption that I made, is that what was happening with the violence. That was the assumption I made. And at the moment, I'm thinking about Black death, of Black death, period, right? Of Black men, of Black women, of Black trans women, men, of Black gay folks. I'm thinking about the Black death, because that's been happening. You understand? Like, Black death has been happening disproportionately to Black trans women too, right? It's been happening to them too, disproportionately. You know what I mean? At the hands of law enforcement too, disproportionately, right? I'm just saying that I'm just sort of like in this moment, and I had Thursday morning is my therapy days, right? And like, you know, this morning, and part of the conversation was dealing with this shit, like this shit, You know, and that's just where I'm coming from. So, I mean, I saw some comments. I just want to be clear that, like, this is not a demarcation time of we talk about, like, we only talk about certain policies at a certain time. That is not the demarcation I'm making. I'm not making any demarcation. I'm just simply asking, the question I opened, right, was like, are we being sensitive to the moment? That's the only question that was what I asked. It was a question, and I just sort of expounded upon the question, you know what I mean?
Just really quick, this is off topic, but what comments? What people?
Yeah, I got my computer right here. It's on.
Okay.
I try not to read. I learned a long time ago not to read comments.
Man, looking over here,
but
like I don't see shit.
I feel like someone had like a different Zoom. Like y'all got like some special Zoom that Pittsburgh niggas don't have access to. And okay, all right.
Wait, was somebody? Wait, I'm not trying to get it. I don't see no comments, but were people coming hard at Phillip in the comments? Is that what happened? Oh, okay.
I mean, I know. Yeah. I mean, the comment section is always, I mean, I appreciate the comments, right? I mean, we put it out there for people to talk to us, so I'm not gonna get mad at that. I guess this is, there's a cliche, right? This is what love looks like in public and all that sort of jazz. But there's not so much cliche to it. I think in any moment, particularly but when moments when hypervigilance is at its highest, we gotta be able to ask questions that, we gotta be honest, right? We gotta be honest about our gut. We also gotta be thoughtful, but we gotta be honest about like what's going in our guts, right? Phillip, you had spoke about how you was feeling something in your stomach earlier, right? Mm-hmm. During the call, right? And one of the reasons why these occurrences keep happening in terms of harm all around, in terms of why we, the intramural harm that we come in, and definitely the state sanctioned harm, a lot of it because we're just not honest with each other, and part of the honesty doesn't mean be clear, doesn't mean shutting anybody down, or it doesn't get, honesty is also not an excuse to be disrespectful or dismissive either of anything or anybody. But I just think this is how we grow, you know what I mean? Because ultimately the fight or the love that's necessary to transcend these type of moments from happening another million times is that we got to be so strong to collectively, like we got to be so fucking strong. Not strong in no muscular, I'm just talking about strong in terms of how much we care and take care of each other. We got to be so resolute in us. We got a ways to go in that. We know that. We talked about it earlier in the call. I mean, in the Zoom, we got some ways to go. But like, going back to the question you asked a while ago about what does justice look like in this moment, like, is that for us, is that collective caring? I mean, I'm not saying anything that Kirsay and Brittany talk about already, but just kind of going back to that question, connecting it to that question at the outset. The care gotta be for every one of us, all our Blackness, and the way it looks in all the various ways and expressions of it. Like, we got to be so resolute in what that caring looks like, because ultimately, like, I believe we got this is me getting my little pulpit, but like, I believe we can like transcend this shit. I just really believe in us. I believe in us in a way that I just really do. And I've seen us in the worst positions. I've seen us at our worst. I've seen us do things to each other in the worst ways, and I still see possibility in that shit. You know what I mean? And I think somebody asked, I did another Zoom interview earlier, and she asked me, like, where do I lose hope at moments? And I was like, sometimes it feels far away, straight up. Be honest, sometimes it feels far away. But the thing that brings it right back is that I know, Brittany said this to me a while ago, bro, at these little brunches that we be having here, these we call it Black Brilliance brunches that we having. It's like 2-3 years ago. And I was like I was emotionally in a very tough place. And it was a Christmas party though, right? But I'm like, I'm gonna be out, I'm gonna try to engage and be social. And Brittany said something to me, man. And I don't think I even told all the stuff I was dealing with, but she said to me, Marlon, you know, you've been through worse, and you've gotten through it. And she knows my personal story, right? And I just think for us as Black folks, like this is tethering on the resiliency part, but it's much more enshrouded in the place of power. That like I just know it. Like I know that shit. Like I know that as much as I know my hand is Black. Like I know that. You know what I mean? I just think that collectively we can care more about each other to all accept that. I don't think we accept we can. You know what I mean? Anyways, it's kind of a little bit late, bro. I got to get off, but I mean, I appreciate you. I didn't know, Little T got us up here with like 1 trillion people. I didn't know, somehow I just thought it was going to be a few of us kicking it. This might go reshare. They're going to have excerpts of us saying all type of shit, facial expression, you know, Phillip digging his nose or whatever. Like, they're going to have all that.
It's KSA's fault, you know. He the famous one. Him and Damon the famous ones. Him, Damon, and Brittany. So, you know, I thought y'all was gonna be sharing y'all my 20 friends. You know.
No, thank you and Sharia for making this space for us.
Sharia.
For sure.
Nah. I wanna thank, you know, you guys and you know, the ladies that were on earlier. You know, Derica, Benet, Brittany, and all of you for just thinking in real time, right? And I think that was really the beauty of it, is that, you know, it wasn't scripted. I didn't give you guys a list of questions or anything. We talked about what came to mind in these moments. And, you know, and so what I definitely want to make sure that not only, you know, you guys that are here now, but everybody watching, is that we're performing and practicing proper self-care. You know, like, you don't have to watch the videos. You can disconnect from social media. You know, you can go out and find an area to just walk or to meditate. You know, you can really, you want to, she's doing stuff behind me, so I know what's going on. You want to talk about self-care?
Well, no, I'm not going to tell you what to do for your self-care, but I'm going to say take it serious right now. And if nothing else, be really radical about it in terms of making sure that if you like to run, you make sure it's an active thing you do every day. If you like to do mindfulness activities, then make sure that you put them throughout your day. Find distractions that bring you joy, right? So in a time of difficulty, when we're looking for hope, we have to be able to look for joy within that moment, in those moments. So if you have children, being able to even look at their hope and being able to live through their hope is one element of being able to get ready to well yourself, right? And then the other things you can do is turn off the news, turn off the media, say no to some of these conversations if this is part of what your gig is, right? Being okay with taking a moment to yourself doesn't mean that you don't care about the cause. It doesn't mean that you don't want things to be better for your community, but it means that to be our best self, we have to take care of ourselves to even take care of our community. So I would just say, be really thoughtful about your self-care right now, whatever that means for you. So for me this morning, that meant instead of a 2-mile walk, it meant taking 3 or 4. And it meant being by the water because I create best by it, right? So it also meant crying. It meant that I needed to cry some tears for the women not mentioned. I needed to cry some tears for the men that are dying too. And then it meant for me multiple things that are layered in this one incident. And so just being okay with not being okay is also part of self-care. And then also remembering that those around you who love you and recognize your struggles have an opportunity that you may not give them sometimes, which is to share with you how you're feeling so they can also share it with you how they feel. And it can be just an intimate conversation between you and your partner, and whatever your partner looks like, your friends, your family, whatever that is defined for you. And so,
yeah, I was about to say all that. So y'all know I got me a conversation coming once we log off. But y'all got any parting shots? I know everybody has to go.
I'm just thankful, fam. I'm thankful for y'all. Thank you for curating this space. Thankful for Benet, Derica, Brittany. I'm so thankful that y'all care enough about us to give us this space to work. And I forgot it was public because I can't see no chat and shit, but I hope it was decent work for other people who were watching too.
It looks like it was. People are grateful. Because even the critiques were done in love, like Phillip said. So I think it's part of the process.
Yeah. And
I knew it was coming at some point.
There's a war in the mind over territory for the dominion.
All right, peace, y'all.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Our vision to the world, decision, trap in a second.